Hey guys, and welcome back to part 2 of my Guild Wars 2 beginner guide. If you haven't watched part 1 yet, be sure to check that out because it has some good information and we'll be pretty much picking up where we left off. Last time we covered a lot of the very basics of the game, and this time we're going to be getting into the nitty gritty, so let's get started. Alright, so now that we know most of the basics of Guild Wars 2, it's time to get into actual content. You've completed the opening story instance, but you'll notice that you can't continue this until level 10, so what do we do until then? The first thing I would always recommend before getting started on any content in Guild Wars 2 is unlocking Lion's Arch. I covered this a little bit in my free-to-play guide, but I'm going to cover it again here, so if you missed that one, no worries. By completing the opening story and completing that quest, you'll notice that you're level 2. As soon as level 2, you can click on the cross swords in the upper left-hand side of the screen and enter Heart of the Mists. Heart of the Mists is the PvP zone for Guild Wars 2. Don't worry, we're not getting started on any PvP. This is just the fastest way to get to Lion's Arch right at the beginning of the game. As soon as you load in, you'll notice a portal directly across from the one you just entered. That's it, that's Lion's Arch, and we can just walk through and unlock this zone for our account. The reason that we unlock Lion's Arch is because it's a central hub for most of the game, and you'll have access to nearly every resource this game has to offer. I'll show you guys one more thing real quick before we leave Lion's Arch and get back to our starting zone, and that's the bank. Look for the giant octopus statue thing in Lion's Arch, and just below that you'll see a giant safe. If you run up to that and press F, you can access your account-wide bank. Any character on your account can come up here and access any of the items that you deposit. With that in mind, it's not a bad idea to stow away any weapons or armor that you find for other classes you might be interested in. Also, any items that you pick up that you don't really need right now, it might be a good idea to keep them in there as well, just to keep your inventory free. So now let's open up the map and go back to our starting zone. Near every starting zone, you'll notice on the map that there is a little telescope that is usually glowing, especially towards the beginning. These are scouts. Now, in my time playing the game, I really haven't used scouts all that often because I just kind of like to throw myself into the game, but scouts can be really useful. By talking to these guys, they'll open your map and show you everything there is to do in the vicinity. So now you know where to go, but what exactly do you do in this game? As I mentioned in the last guide, Guild Wars 2 takes a slightly different approach to traditional questing. Traditional questing being the typical quest log that you fill with random duties that NPCs give you, where you have to go out and kill X number of boars to turn them in for a reward, and the good people from ArenaNet decided they didn't like that system and kind of came up with something a little less soul-sucking. So of the things that the scout revealed to you, one of these things may have been some of the renown hearts in the area. The renown hearts appear on the map as a gold outlined heart. This heart that you see actually represents an NPC that needs you to do various things to fill up that heart and complete the heart quest. For example, if you come up on a farm, you might water the plants, kill enemies that threaten the livelihood of the people there as well as the crops they're trying to grow, or even just pick up trash. As you do this, you'll see a little bar on the right-hand side fill up, as well as the heart itself on the map, and when you complete it, no matter where you're standing, the reward for this quest will just pop up on your screen. This is sometimes accompanied by a thank you mail, but gone are the days of venturing out into the world to complete this task that you then have to return to turn in later. You'll find renown hearts sprinkled through most of the maps up until about the end of the game. So now that you're out doing hearts, you'll probably notice a few other things on your map. The most obvious of which is probably the waypoint. We've already used waypoints a few times in this and the previous guide, but now let's actually talk about what these are. Waypoints appear on your map as a diamond with a smaller blue diamond in the center. These can be clicked on from anywhere in the world to teleport you for a small fee, and are also a great source of XP when you're leveling up. Guild Wars 2 doesn't offer mounts like a lot of other MMOs, so the waypoint system is sort of the workaround for that. I recommend gathering as many of these as you can, because while new content is added to Guild Wars 2, it doesn't mean that it won't take you back to an old zone. Also in your travels, you may have come across points of interest, or POIs, as some players call them. These appear as small colorless squares on the map. Discovering one of these will give you a small amount of XP and reveal the name of the unmarked location. While the extra XP is always nice, some of these places are actually pretty cool, so I recommend checking these out anytime you're near one. So now you've traveled around for a bit and you've leveled up 1 or 2 times, and you're noticing that there are these 2 small red outline triangles, some of which you might not be able to get to. These are vistas. Interacting with a vista will play a short cutscene showing you the surrounding area in all of its glorious splendor. In addition, these too grant experience. Some vistas are right out in the open and not very hard to get to, while others require a much more persistent approach. While there are a lot of guides online that'll tell you how to get these really easy, I prefer to struggle for sometimes up to an hour just to get one of these. It's a lot more fun than you might think. Less frequently than some of the other things I've mentioned, you might also stumble upon a hero challenge. Hero challenges appear on the map as an arrow pointing up. Usually, the NPC issuing this challenge requests you to do something in exchange for a hero point. And more often than not, that something they want you to do is
fight them.
Just some fair warning for anybody who stumbles on one of these, you should be ready for combat when you talk to this NPC. Also, if you're struggling, usually someone will come by, or you could even ask for help to complete some of these earlier on. As before, hero points do grant experience, but most importantly, they grant hero points. These points are used on all sorts of stuff as you get through the game, but right towards the beginning you should probably focus on buying utility skills when those become available. We'll talk about this more when that comes up. So now not only do you have a list of objectives to help get you to level 10 for that personal story quest, but you've also started exploring the game and learning its ins and outs. What I haven't told you is how renowned hearts, points of interest, vistas, and hero points work together to further reward you as the player character. If you manage to complete all those objectives on each map, you'll be awarded the chest for that map. You may have already noticed this, but if you press M to open your map and look in the top left corner, you'll see a world completion and a map-wide completion. Each map has a certain number of objectives to complete, and upon completing all of these objectives, you're awarded with a chest. Now, the rewards in this chest are going to be scaled to the level of the map that you're on, just something to keep in mind, but you'll also be rewarded with some experience on the side. If you manage to complete all zones in Guild Wars 2, you unlock world completion for your account. This unlocks a title you can display for other characters, and unlocks an item called the Gift of Exploration, required to craft legendary weapons. We're not going to talk about legendary weapons right now, just know that it's one of the more sought after things in this game. Outside of map completion, you may notice some dynamic events popping up in the world around you. Dynamic events show up on the screen marked in orange, and these are live events that you can take part in. All of the objectives for dynamic events show up on the right-hand side of your screen. These will vary from event to event, but it's usually pretty clear what the objective is. Sometimes, after completing one of these events, the NPCs will continue talking. Sometimes these short conversations will result in yet another dynamic event popping up. Dynamic events can sometimes chain for a while, telling a short story or at least conveying a brief struggle with the surrounding wildlife or other factions. Some events are as simple as gathering things and bringing them back to an NPC, while others are as complicated as map-wide meta events that require map-wide collaboration just to complete. But don't worry yourself too much, because those types of events don't typically show up until later on. Completing dynamic events gives you a decent amount of XP, so these are definitely something to consider while you're playing the game, especially if you're trying to hit a level cap to continue your story. Not to mention, this is an integral part of the way Guild Wars 2 works in the endgame. So this is the flow of progression, at least until level 10 when you can continue the personal story. If at any point you hit a wall and you just feel like, man, I can't really get any more experience out of this zone, or I'm tired of this zone, feel free to head back to that Lion's Arch waypoint we got earlier, and I'll show you something nice and easy that you can do to continue your progression. Once in Lion's Arch, head over to Coriolis Plaza, which has a nice ring of portals to all of the other starting zones. If you're interested in a different race or just want a specific specific change of climate, look at the guy standing outside of the portal, and it's pretty easy to tell where you're headed. A few representatives from each of the races will be standing outside of the portal to let you know what starting zone you're headed to. Not only are the cities themselves maps that you can complete, but each of those starting zones is filled with vistas and points of interest, renown hearts, dynamic events, and hero points that you can complete in each of those areas to further level your character in some fresh surroundings. So as you complete all these map objectives, you're leveling up, and I'm sure you're realizing that you're unlocking things as you're doing that. It's pretty easy to get caught up in map completion and ignore those rewards altogether, so I'm going to give you a quick list of all the most important unlocks that you get from 2 to level 10. At level 3, you're going to be able to add 4-slot leather bags to your inventory to increase its capacity. At level 4, you'll unlock banking. At level 7, you'll unlock the Black Lion Trading Company or the auction house, as well as the availability to repair your damaged armor. And at level 9, you'll finally be able to start gathering. Now I'm going to take a quick moment to talk about gathering real quick, because at level 9 you're awarded 3 gathering tools right away. As soon as you hit level 9, be sure to equip these items. The harvestable nodes will show up on the map as a little mountain for mining, a little shrub for harvesting, and a small stack of logs for logging. Gathering these not only helps with crafting when that becomes unlocked, but also every time you strike something you're trying to gather, you gain a little bit of XP. And it's not very much, but it does add up if you make sure to take the time and harvest whenever you're around something that you can. Also worth mentioning is that all nodes can be harvested by multiple people. So if you're in a party with some friends and you see a node, you don't have to fight over it. So enough with gathering, because we've just hit level 10 and now we can get started back on our personal story. But before we do that, there's one other unlock you get at level 10 and it can be easily glossed over, and that is weapon swap. This feature allows you to set up a second set of weapons that you can switch between in a fight. So if your abilities are on cooldown and there's not really anything you can do, just swap weapons and now you have a whole new set of skills to use. Also, the utility here is pretty awesome. You can switch from long range to short range, physical to magical, depending on the class that you're playing. It's good stuff, guys. Good stuff. Alright guys, you're level 10. You probably want to get started on the main story again. I will say that the main story is pretty much like this for the rest of the game. You'll get to a point where you can do more of the story, and then you'll have to level up 10 more times before you can continue. So we covered a lot today, but I feel like there's still a little bit more to talk about, so I'll probably make a part 3 to this guide. But moving forward, it's going to be more about the remaining features of the game rather than the level that it comes to you. You guys are level 10 now, and to be frank, you guys are going to be doing pretty much everything I just explained here for the rest of the game. Or at least until you hit the max level of 80, and then there's all kinds of new stuff you can do. Anyway guys, as always, thanks for watching. I hope you found this informative. If you like this video, feel free to let me know down below. If you think that this channel might be for you, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And if you think I'm a terrible human being who ought to be dead, well, that's just fine too. As always, guys, I'll see you in the next one. But seriously, stay tuned for part 3.